Hey guys, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's interview, we have Rupp, founder and CEO at Sabanto, the company creating simple, safe, and cost-effective technologies that enable the future of agriculture. So, welcome, Craig. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me on this podcast. Okay, first and foremost, I grew up on a farm in Northwest Iowa, corn, soybeans, hogs, cattle. I left the farm in 1984 thinking I would never return to another farm. And then I became an electrical engineer. And I spent the majority of my career in the wireless industry, specifically cellular. And I did do a stint with John Deere and developed a Starfire receiver and Green Star display for them. Then I went back into the wireless industry, and that's when I saw the iPad that Apple was developing. And it all came back to me that farmers should be using this iPad, very, very high performance, low cost. And it took me back to this Green Star display I was working at with Deere. And so I started a company, 640 Labs, that the intent was we were going to turn that iPad into essentially a Green Star display. And then we got acquired by Monsanto in 2014. Then I spent 4 years working hand in hand with farmers, and labor's a problem for them. And so what I did, I decided at that time that I want to do something about this. And I started a company, Sabanto, with the intent that we're going to start automating farm equipment, and such that these farmers can basically get out of their tractor and hit a button and start performing field operations autonomously.
Okay. Wow, this is a really interesting story. I had no idea about the iPad thing. I think it's great, especially because you do not only have this background of being at the farm, but you also have the knowledge as an engineer, right? And now you're the founder and CEO, so I'm pretty sure it's been a hell of a road, right?
I have an odd or eclectic background in that I know agriculture per se. I'm not a farmer. I do understand the seed, the fertilizer, the farming operations, but I also developed quite a lot of products throughout my career. GSM, every flavor of cellular I've worked on and done quite a lot of product development. And essentially I'm digging deep in all the talents that I have to create this company.
Wow. And I know that you guys recently closed 17 Series A funding round last year.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about it? How was the process like?
I took the traditional VC funded approach. We were seed funded by Data Collective out of San Francisco and Cavallo as well. Ventures at San Francisco, and also BioCrossroads out of Indianapolis. And we progressed, and it was really proof of concept, market fit. And we went out for a Series A. And on that, Fulcrum out of Kansas City led the route. Data Collective was involved in it. Cavallo was in there. SK out of South Korea. We have Yara out of Germany. We have Cooperative Ventures, which is CHS and Growmark. Trimble is in there as well, and also Johnsonville out of Wisconsin. And God, I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. We believe we're at a point now where we have product market fit, and we're setting up a distribution network of precision agriculture type of dealers and distributors, and they're helping us take this out to market. And so it's kind of we're really kind of pioneers in taking autonomy out into the market.
And that was actually my next question, like how hard it has been for farmers to automate the process. I'm pretty sure that they were used to some kind of process, and then everything changes with Sabanto. So how this has...
Over the past couple of years, we've been working with farmers about performing field operations where we deploy these systems and we monitor them for them. I mean, we started very early doing that because there's quite a lot to learn in. It's just a little bit more than just deploying this tractor and watching it remotely. It's making sure you're doing a good job and monitoring the implement appropriately. And so the onus was on us to make it work initially. And then we got to the point where we started working with farmers. And then what we would do is teach their laborers or their hired hands as to how to use the system. So it was kind of a learning process for both the farmers and ourselves in deploying these. Obviously, you have to tailor it. We had to tailor our product offering, our mission control, the nomenclature and whatnot. I'm not going to say it went exceedingly well. There were some issues, but now, we have systems deployed in Texas and also Florida and throughout the Midwest.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I mean, you've talked about two different topics, the expanding and also the challenges. So I'm curious to ask, you guys survived the pandemic. How do you say you survived this, especially talking about hardware?
Yeah. So a couple things. When COVID hit, I was really concerned as to, what is going to happen. And at the time we had a team of 6, and then during COVID, I think we increased to about 9 people, or actually 10 people working for the company. And we all decided that we're going to work remote and we're going to stay amongst ourselves and not go out to the general public. That worked out fairly well for us. We had a very small team of people that were developing the equipment. And then I had a small team that were developing software. And those guys were working remote. And looking back at it, it was an unintended consequence of working remote that put constraints on our system that helped us in the long run. The other thing too is farmers are pretty cavalier when it comes to the pandemic. I'll be completely honest with you. They're going to put the seed in the ground no matter what. If you have COVID, you take a week off or 2 weeks off and you're going to be back in the tractor running because we have to get the seed in the ground. And so, there was an advantage to that in that our customer base wasn't shut down, unlike sports venues and restaurants where they had to shut down.
We normally tend to speak with different CEOs and founders in the industry, and most of them are really involved in the procurement process. But I mean, taking it back to the pandemic, purchasing and everything in the hardware industry, it was hard. So how was it for you?
That's a good point. I think every company that creates a hardware product does have some sort of supply chain issues. We certainly do have that. And it's odd in that being knee deep in it, it's the strangest components that are limited in the market right now. With connectors, and that we're having tough time getting connectors and whatnot. Given that we do have a hardware product, it is just another thing that we have to deal with. And the other advantage we had when we started developing hardware, every part that we put down in the schematic, we made sure that it had ample quantities in the supply chain.
Wow. I think that you guys have a really good organization, especially because it's a small team. It sounds like you guys have a system that it's
Yeah. Normally I've worked on products where you can call up contract manufacturers and you give them a bill of materials and Gerber files, and they would build a board per the design. Now the onus is on us to make sure that we have the supply.
Thank you so much for sharing, Craig. And one of the last questions, talking about next steps for Sabanto, do you have any plans that you can share with us? Obviously, something that we have to look forward to?
We're developing a distributor network, and you're going to see over the next couple of weeks just announcements of dealers and distributors for us. And the second thing, what we're doing is we're adding more compatibility to our system. So we create the system to take off-the-shelf tractors and we automate them. And we just announced that we are supporting the Kubota M5. Our theory is that this massive farm equipment, you're going to start seeing it get smaller with autonomy. Okay. And to that end, we're adding more compatibility with different makes and models. We're agnostic when it comes to tractors.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Exciting news. We'll make sure to stay tuned with Sabanto. And last but not least, what advice would you give to future entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders in the agtech industry?
I guess best advice that I would give is make sure you know how to build a team. It's one thing to have a killer idea. It's another thing to go get funding for it. But really, I think the most important thing is your ability to build a team. Getting people to leave perfectly good paying jobs to join you is kind of a daunting task. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't build a team around it, then you're going to have troubles.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I totally agree. I think these are really valuable advice. So thank you so much for sharing that with our audience. And Craig, do you have any social media handles? Where can people find you? Where can people find Sabanto?
Best place is on social media, on LinkedIn, Sabanto Ag, Twitter, Sabanto Ag, and also Facebook.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for
Obviously,
sharing.
you can go to sabantoag.com and see our website.
Okay, we'll make sure to follow you guys. And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews, just like this one, directly on our website, controlhub.com/builder-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, Craig, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time. We really appreciate it. Super excited about what Sabanto has next for us.
All right. You take care.